President Trump says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is a dictator. It's Trump's harshest criticism yet of a leader the United States and its allies rallied behind just 3 years ago after his country was invaded by Russia. Trump's comments come after his team of negotiators held a first round of talks with Russian officials this week aimed at ending the war. Ukraine was not invited to the talks. Joining us to discuss this and more, Niall Stanage, White House columnist here at The Hill. So Niall, Zelenskyy is the dictator. He also better act now before he doesn't have a country left. What do you make of these comments?
It's obviously the farthest Trump has gone, at least since he returned to power, in terms of this anti-Zelenskyy language. Obviously, it bespeaks very serious trouble for Ukraine. Ukraine has been on the back foot in the war with Russia, has been struggling to repel the Russian invasion, Russia making some advances. Of course, we knew that President Trump was generally opposed to maintaining American aid at the kind of intensity and cadence that we had previously seen. But to go as far as to describe Zelenskyy as a dictator is really pretty extreme.
Trump's comments come after Zelenskyy voiced concern about being left out of those first round of talks. Trump responded to those concerns voiced by Zelenskyy yesterday. Let's take a listen.
But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down.
So not only is Zelenskyy a dictator, but he started the war. It seems like this puts a lot of pressure on Europe. It appears right now that the U.S. is going to be siding with Vladimir Putin, not going to really be continuing to support Ukraine in the war. How do you think Europe will respond to this?
There has been some suggestion that Europe could step up to some degree, but I think the United States, in fairness, has been the indispensable partner for Ukraine. If the US is going to pull that support completely, it's kind of difficult to see Europe really filling the gap in a full way, a complete way, a way that would give Ukraine a path to victory or even to a stalemate in this war. Now, some people like the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, have suggested they could step up to a degree, but I don't think that's going to be the full extent of the kind of aid the US was providing.
France also reportedly offering to send troops into the area under some kind of a peace negotiation, but again, major questions about what that looks like without U.S. support. A federal judge has ruled against more than a dozen states seeking to block Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency from gaining access to confidential information about several federal government agencies. The states were led by Democratic attorneys general. They argued that Musk's role at DOGE is unconstitutional because he's not Senate confirmed. There's been a string of rulings where judges have been refusing to block DOGE access to different government agencies. Is this, despite Democratic lawmakers' claim to the contrary, does this show that the actions so far by Trump are legal?
It certainly is a win for the Trump administration and a win for Elon Musk, not least because the judge that you're referring to, Tanya Chutkan, was actually the judge who presided over the January the 6th case against Trump. So it's not as if she can be dismissed as someone particularly sympathetic to the current administration's point of view. Lots of the MAGA people were very critical of her in the January the 6th case. So I think the fact that she has come down ultimately on DOGE's side is helpful to people like Elon Musk. The point, I guess, is her argument really was that those states who you mentioned, the Democratic attorneys general, weren't able to show immediate harm to the states by what DOGE is doing. She did acknowledge that DOGE's actions had created quite a lot of instability and uncertainty, but not high enough to meet the legal bar.
Is that to say this could be a temporary win, but later on when this case is heard in full, could put limitations on what DOGE has done or even undo?
Right, and that's what we're seeing in a number of different DOGE-related cases, and for that matter, a number of different Trump administration-related cases. Arguments over restraining orders, whether those should be prolonged or ended, pending the outcome of the underlying legal cases. And of course, it's those underlying cases that have the most importance.
President Trump has ordered the Department of Justice to fire all remaining Biden-era U.S. attorneys. He wrote on social media that the DOJ has been politicized like never before, and he has to clean house to restore confidence. A president talking like that about the U.S. justice system might be pretty novel to Trump, but it's not uncommon for a new president to come in and remove U.S. attorneys that were appointed by the opposite party, right?
Well, it's not in the sense of, requesting resignation letters and then you decide who you're going to reappoint and so forth. I think what is unusual here is the sweeping nature of it, the idea that they're going to fire all people who have any connection with the Biden administration. Now, the president will defend it in the terms that you suggested about trying to cleanse politicization from the department. Obviously, Democrats, and for that matter, liberal Americans, would have completely the opposite view, that this is in fact Trump trying to fill the department with his loyalists.
Elon Musk appeared together side by side during an interview last night with Sean Hannity on Fox News. A hard-hitting interview, it was not, but it did display that the Trump-Musk marriage is strong. Many have predicted a looming divorce, but I wonder if you think the concept of mutually assured destruction keeps them together.
Yeah, I do, and I've always been skeptical about the idea that they will split, because my personal view of this, if you like, is Donald Trump has been animated throughout his life by how he is publicly perceived. And I think he knows that Elon Musk, particularly through his proprietorship of X, can really control that in currently positive ways, but negative ways if they had some great acrimony between them. So I think Trump, for his part, has an interest in keeping Musk on board. And obviously Musk gets this enormous access to the federal government by virtue of his closeness to Trump.
Yeah, Musk with that huge bank account can offer help in several different ways. Also in that interview, Trump said that inflation is back. He said it's not his fault, blame Biden. I think it's probably fair that he can't take full responsibility for everything that happens in the economy right now, but it's a far cry from I'm going to slash prices on day one.
Right, exactly. And we saw a lot of those promises about things that were going to be changed on day one, including, as it happens, the Russia-Ukraine war was going to be settled on day one. In relation to inflation, it is certainly true that there are lots of different factors involved in the level of inflation at any time. And I think it is fair for Trump to say it's not all on me, but we do know that these tariff threats are something that a lot of economists see as inflationary by their nature. So I think that's where there is a danger for the president.
And I assume the American public will get tired of hearing that at some point during his presidency. It was something that dogged the Biden administration throughout. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Niall Stanage, White House columnist here at The Hill. Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
In a NewsNation exclusive, the Trump administration has ordered immigration enforcement officials to detain everyone who was previously released into the country under the so-called catch and release program. Allie Bradley joins us from Del Rio, Texas, with the details.
Yeah, Drew. So if these individuals were one of the thousands that came in under parole, or they were potentially released after not being processed with a court date, they're now a target for the Trump administration, and we're talking about a lot of individuals here. So a new directive that we obtained through DHS sources upholds existing immigration laws, but it calls for the detention of all illegal immigrants who were not processed and given charging documents like a notice to appear. It directs all ERO personnel to detain anyone who was released into the country under that catch and release practice, and they should review individuals for re-detention if they were released because there was not a significant likelihood of removal in the foreseeable future. But the tables have turned and they can now be removed because some countries have stepped up. They are willing to take other nationalities back as a third country removal process, including El Salvador and Costa Rica. Retired ICE Field Office Director John Fabricatore tells us that the administration is using these pre-existing laws from the Immigration Nationality Act in order to clean up these cases that were paroled into the United States.
A lot of these cases are already on the docket with enforcement removal operations. They're already doing check-ins. Some of them should have probably been processed differently when they came across the border, but because of the limited detention space that we had, instead of them detaining them and actually going through the whole case, they were just released into the interior of the United States. It'll be a lot better process because they'll see the credible fear officer, will make a determination on whether that alien can be eligible for asylum, and then allow them to go through the process, or continued with the expedited removal and remove them from the country.
Now, Drew, this does include the more than 500,000 individuals that came in under the Biden administration's CHNV parole program. That includes people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, those individuals will now be re-reviewed and detained for potential removal. Now, when it comes to the CBP1 app, you add those in there, we're looking at another roughly 1 million people. Those individuals will likely be reviewed and given a notice to appear, so then they can go through those proceedings in that way. Drew?
NewsNation's Ali Bradley, thank you. We are now 30 days into President Trump's second term, and where his first administration may have gotten off to a slow start, his second administration is wasting no time. Here's a look at his second term by the numbers. Trump has signed an unprecedented 70 executive orders, and he's on track to break the record for most orders signed in the first 100 days. The president who currently holds the record is FDR with 99. Trump's second administration so far has 77 separate lawsuits or legal complaints filed against it, many related to those executive orders. Despite the heavy legal action to block his agenda, his approval rating is slightly up compared to Inauguration Day, now at 46.6%. Meantime, prices are still on the rise. Gas is up 4 cents, and egg prices are up nearly $1.50 in Trump's first 30 days. Much of the rise in egg prices can be attributed to the bird flu. Take a look at this chart. Wholesale prices for large white eggs have ballooned more than 73% since January 10th of this year. The Trump administration now saying it is encouraging a different strategy to fight the disease. Usually farmers kill off entire flocks when disease strikes. That has led to more than 32 million domesticated birds to be killed so far this year. The director of National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, says they are now stressing vaccinations and tighter biosecurity to help contain the disease. Hassett says the administration is planning to announce more details this week. The Department of Government Efficiency has posted an update of its work as it looks to slash government spending across the federal government. NewsNation chief Washington correspondent and host of The Hill, Blake Berman, has the numbers.
DOGE cuts to the federal budget. I'm Blake Berman, host of The Hill on NewsNation. The Department of Government Efficiency estimates they've identified $55 billion in savings so far. It comes from, they say, a combination of fraud detection, lease cancellations, asset sales, grant terminations, and workforce reductions. Now, DOGE says that over $16 billion will be saved by canceling contracts, including about $6.5 billion related to USAID, and over $500 million from the Department of Education. Real estate accounts for almost $150 million, and almost $200 million in cuts are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, on average, the U.S. government spent more than $18 billion per day in 2024. So this represents about 3 days of federal spending. But keep in mind, the national debt is more than $36 trillion. I'm Blake Berman, and this is the NewsNation Political Minute.
And you can find more news and analysis from Blake and his colleagues 24/7 on NewsNation. To find NewsNation on your screen, go to joinnn.com. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.